Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a mountain of information and distill it into the crucial insights you need. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a topic that's, well, really vital for anyone building experiences in UEFN and Fortnite Creative. We're talking about mastering the art of gathering and acting on player feedback.
Yeah, it's a challenge every single developer faces, right? From, the smallest indie creator maybe building their first island all the way up to the large game studios. Our sources today really unpack the psychology behind feedback, explore some practical methods for actually collecting it, and I think most importantly, show you how to turn even the, let's say, toughest comments into a powerful path for growth and ultimately a better game. We've looked into articles on constructive versus destructive criticism, insights straight from game dev communities, and some really hands-on guides for using those in-game analytics.
hmm So our mission for you, the UFN developer listening in, is to equip you with strategies. Strategies to not just hear your players, but to truly understand them. This really helps you refine your own creative vision and build those thriving communities around your unique creations. So, yeah, let's unpack this.
Okay, so you've poured your heart and soul into a new island in Fortnite Creative. You're watching players jump in for the first time. How do you even begin to get a clear pulse on what they truly think? Where do we start when we need to gather that feedback?
Right. Well, I think we should start with the objective side, the quantitative stuff, because, numbers, they don't usually lie. For UFN and Fortnite creative developers, the Creator Analytics dashboard is your absolute first stop, no question. Think of it like your game's vital signs monitor, okay? It pulls daily data, giving you this really in-depth look at the key metrics.
Okay, the vital signs monitor, I like that.
Yeah.
But what exactly does that pulse monitor show us? I know for a lot of creators, you see a dashboard full of numbers and can feel, well, pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
What are the key insights we should actually be looking for? That's a fair point, yeah. Let's try and simplify it. You've got these core behavioral metrics like total active players and average playtime. Now, the insight here isn't just how many players or how long they stayed. It's really about recognizing patterns. So, for example, if you see a consistent dip in active players at certain times of day or certain days of the week, that's not necessarily bad news. It's a signal.
A signal. How so?
Well, it might be your community kind of telling you, hey, we're ready for new content, or maybe even this is the time we need a fun, quick social challenge to pull us back in.
Interesting.
It turns a simple number into a strategic engagement tool. And if that average playtime is low, well, that suggests your initial experience might have some hidden friction, right? Maybe players aren't finding clear objectives, or the early game just isn't hooking them properly.
Ah, I see. So it forces you to look really closely at those crucial first few minutes.
Exactly. It pushes you to consider adding maybe more objectives, different gameplay loops, better spawn pads, maybe even different weapons right at the start. And crucially, when you make those tweaks, you gotta highlight those changes on social media. Or hey, even better, let players vote on the potential changes, get them involved.
That totally shifts the perspective, doesn't it? From just seeing a number to seeing an actionable signal. What about understanding if we're, reaching new people? Or if our game actually has long-term appeal? Is there data for that?
Absolutely. The dashboard offers some really crucial retention insights too. You've got new Fortnite ecosystem players. That metric tells you how many brand new Fortnite players, people on their first day playing Fortnite, ever visit your island. That's pretty cool.
Wow, okay. That's powerful.
Yeah. And conversely, you have players returning to Fortnite ecosystem. That shows how many players come back to Fortnite specifically via your island after being away for like 28 days or more. These are pure gold for understanding your island's broader appeal beyond just the core UEFN crowd. Then there's island retention, specifically the daily retention rate. That's like the ultimate stickiness test.
Stickiness.
Yeah. Are players coming back the very next day? If not, that's a critical insight. It tells you your initial experience might have that friction point we talked about, or maybe you just aren't sparking that immediate desire for one more round.
Okay, so it's not just about the daily blips on the radar, but the bigger picture too.
Yeah.
Like tracking overall growth and figuring out which of our islands are the real stars.
Precisely. Total lifetime plays gives you that overall count of visits since you publish. Simple enough. And for a sort of portfolio level view, Overall Highlights offers a cumulative look at unique players, monthly plays, weekly, lifetime, all that jazz. Helps you track growth or, spot any worrying drops. And here's a direct strategic insight for you. Look at my top performing games or your top 10 games. That identifies your most popular islands, obviously. Now, If one game consistently stays at the top for over a month, that's a clear signal.
Signals to do what? Promote it more?
Well, yes, but also it's a signal to go play your other top 10 islands yourself, like really play them. This helps you identify areas for improvement because you can directly compare what your less popular games might be missing compared to your breakout hit. What's the magic ingredient? And maybe one final best practice for using all this data, try not to jump to conclusions based on short-term data, like a single day's drop. It could mean anything. Consistent releases and actually noting your updates in your own logs will help you pinpoint what changes actually affect performance over time.
Right, right. So the dashboard gives us this incredible quantitative lens. It paints a clear picture of player behavior kind of from a distance. But while those numbers are super powerful, they don't always tell us the why, do they? The why behind the actions. How do we move beyond just the data points to truly hear the human voice, to get those raw opinions and feelings directly from our players?
That's a crucial pivot, yeah. This is where the direct subjective feedback comes into play. So beyond the dashboard, UEFN actually offers a subtle but really powerful tool called the analytics device. It's for in-game data collection. Players are completely unaware these things are even there. But their actions like stepping on specific triggers, entering certain volumes, eliminating enemies, even just pressing buttons can trigger data collection. And that data gets recorded daily to your Creator portal.
So it's like tracking specific actions within the game itself.
Exactly. And it's incredibly memory efficient, too. Uses just 39 memory for the first one, and only 9 for any subsequent devices up to 100 placements. So you can really sprinkle them around. But the key, the absolute key to making it useful is renaming these devices clearly. Don't leave them as Analytics Device 1. Call it something like Death Run Level 1 Checkpoint or Profrontal Elimination Zone. Then the data actually tells you something meaningful when you look at it later. You can even hook it up with the Villaverse API for even more specific data tracking on player-led actions.
Okay, that's a really clever way to track how players are engaging without, interrupting their flow.
Yeah.
But how do you get players to actually tell you what they think, to actively share their thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, that's where active community engagement really shines. You've got to be actively participating in places like Reddit forums, Discord servers, maybe even specific social media groups. You need to be listening, obviously, but also responding to feedback. And this is crucial. Highlight the changes you've made based on that feedback back on your social media.
Oh, closing the loop.
Exactly. It not only renews interest in your island, but it powerfully demonstrates to players, hey, we heard you and we value your input. That builds incredible loyalty. And hey, don't forget the simple stuff. Encourage players to favorite or recommend your island. That boosts visibility. Beyond those sort of public forums, you can use more formal methods like surveys and questionnaires, maybe after a match ends, that can capture some really valuable qualitative feedback. Now, there are standardized things like the Game Experience Questionnaire, the GEQ, that exist to assess emotional states, but honestly, they're kind of interruptive, so probably not great for real-time in-game use.
Right, right. So we're not just collecting data passively, we're actively trying to foster a dialogue. What about gathering insights from maybe a more controlled environment, like observing players directly?
Precisely. Observational methods, things like having experts watch gameplay and make notes, or even doing player interviews, can offer insights that automated systems might completely miss. And then, of course, there's internal playtesting. You, the developer, should constantly be playing your own creations. And on multiple devices, desktop, console, mobile, experience it firsthand. This is where you often find those little frustrations or those unexpected moments of joy that data doesn't show. Recruiting trusted playtesters for honest feedback is also vital, and I love this tip from game designer Keith A. Rice.
Oh yeah, that's that.
He recommends actually testing with total strangers, like go to a game store, put up a sign saying test my prototype, and get feedback from people who have no obligation to be nice. Because relying only on friends and family, their positive feedback, while well-intentioned, might just be out of obligation and frankly less genuinely helpful in the long run.
That's a bold move, testing with strangers. But I can see the value. Okay, so once you're getting all this feedback coming in, whether it's from the dashboard, direct comments, play tests, how do you start to sift through it all? How do you know what's truly useful? What's the fundamental difference, really, between constructive and destructive feedback?
Okay, yeah, this is key. The core distinction, it really boils down to actionability. Can you do something with it? Feedback is constructive when it enables you, the creator, to take action and make genuine improvements. Destructive criticism, on the other hand, it just takes. It gives nothing useful back. It drains your self-confidence. It can annihilate trust. And ultimately, it just shuts down the whole conversation.
Okay, actionability. Got it.
Yeah.
Can you maybe paint a clearer picture for us? What are some classic examples of that destructive category that creators should really watch out for?
Absolutely. Think of those wet blanket statements, right? Things like, I hate it, or this is the worst map ever. They're super vague, they offer zero direction, and honestly, there's just lazy criticism. Then you've got what some call shade, not aid, basically snark, like, wow, no one is going to overlook that terrible UI. It's frustrating because it implies the critic could actually offer help, but they choose to just mock instead.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's annoying.
Totally. And then the most egregious, I think, is playing the person, not the ball. Personal attacks like you just suck at making games. These are completely pointless, they lack any imagination, and their only goal is to shut someone down.
Yeah, it's hard not to take those personally, even if you know you shouldn't. But why do some people even resort to that kind of negativity? What's the thinking there?
Well, some individuals genuinely believe it, like toughens people up, or they think it's the unvarnished truth and they're doing you a favor. Some even think it motivates people. But the reality is, for most people, it just drives them away. The downsides are huge.
Hmm.
It kills morale, offers zero practical solutions, makes any kind of cooperation way harder, destroys trust. And it makes people really reluctant to ask for help later, which means mistakes take longer to find and fix. Ultimately, it just makes everyone involved look bad.
Okay, so that's definitely what we don't want. If that's destructive, what does a truly helpful feedback system actually look like? Something that genuinely fosters improvement.
Yeah, a fantastic framework, one used by companies like Ultimerse, is the Stars and Wishes system. It's a direct contrast to all that destructive stuff. Stars are basically praise for what's already working well. You celebrate what's good so you can maybe make more of it or elevate those standout features even further. Wishes, on the other hand, identify opportunities for change. They suggest a direction to explore. The key word there is direction. It implies action.
Stars and wishes. I like that. Simple, actionable.
Exactly. It's excellent for iterative development, right? It allows for quick failure, testing ideas in context. Even when things are quote-unquote terrible, the immediate next thought has to be, okay, here's how we might fix it. It's all about constant improvement, not just tearing things down.
That's a really great practical system. But let's go a bit deeper. Beyond just constructive or destructive, how do we distinguish between generally good feedback and bad feedback? Even if it's not overtly aggressive, it seems like bad doesn't necessarily have to mean negative, right?
That's a really crucial distinction, yeah. Good feedback fundamentally tells you whether you're successfully delivering on your core experience, your intended vision. Bad feedback doesn't. So it's not really about positive versus negative comments, it's about helpful versus unhelpful insights. And a big part of recognizing this difference is understanding who is giving you the feedback and what their potential biases might be.
Biases. Okay, interesting. What kind of biases should we be aware of when we're evaluating feedback?
Well, consider the source, right? A typical consumer, just a player, often gives surprisingly positive feedback, even for games that are just okay. But what they say often means very little until they actually, buy into the experience, consistently keep playing, maybe spend money. Now, contrast that with a store employee or owner, maybe someone curating maps for a platform. Their feedback can be highly valuable because their livelihood literally depends on identifying quality products that will attract and keep players.
Okay, that makes sense. What about reviewers or other designers?
Right. A game reviewer might have ulterior motives, like growing their YouTube channel or their Twitch stream. That can make them susceptible to hype trains or maybe deliberately being contrarian to get clicks. And perhaps surprisingly, a fellow game designer can sometimes be the most biased source of all. Why? Well, competition, maybe jealousy, maybe just ego. Their tendency might be to subconsciously identify how another game is somehow inferior to their own design ideas, rather than giving truly objective, helpful advice.
Wow, okay. That really reframes how we should maybe weigh different types of comments.
Oh.
Can you give us some concrete examples now of good versus bad feedback, keeping those biases in mind?
Certainly. Let's start with good feedback. Good, positive feedback affirms your design. Something like, I absolutely love the map size, it feels really dramatic and epic. That tells you, okay, that specific intention landed. Or maybe the lack of randomness in this card game is so refreshing that highlights a core feature you deliberately designed and players appreciate it. That's good stuff.
And good negative feedback.
Good negative feedback is specific and actionable, even if it stings a bit. Like, heroes probably should only have 3 levels, not 5. The game demands way too much time to experience all of them in a typical match. See? That identifies a clear problem related to player time investment and maybe even tournament structure if you have one. It's specific. Another real example, a playtester saying, I keep forgetting I even have a hero power. I'm just not excited to use my hero. Now, playtesters are great at telling you they're unsatisfied, but remember, it's the designer's job to dig for the why and find the solution. In that case, the developer realized, my heroes are just too weak. They aren't impactful enough.
Got it. Specificity and actionability again. So what about the unhelpful, bad kind of feedback, even the stuff that might sound positive on the surface?
Right. Bad, positive feedback often comes from those well-meaning friends and family we mentioned. They support you out of obligation, maybe say nice things, but then show zero real interest in later playtests. This is actually dangerous if it's your main source of affirmation because it gives you a false sense of security. That's why testing with strangers is so often recommended. Bad, negative feedback includes things that are just way too far outside the game's core objectives, like someone saying, you should just get rid of the map entirely. That essentially just means this game isn't for me, and it offers zero actionable insight for your game. Or comments like, your game doesn't appeal to insert specific type of player. That's pretty worthless because, honestly, you could say that about any game. It doesn't offer specific design guidance at all.
Okay. That distinction between helpful, unhelpful versus positive, negative is really clarifying. Now, let's talk about the internet. We all know it can be a wild place, right? Full of trolls, negativity. When you're putting your creative work out there, how do you handle the truly toxic or just plain unhelpful comments without letting them completely derail your passion or just burn you out?
Yeah, that's a tough one. When you're dealing with real toxicity online, it helps to remember that often some people are just lashing out. Maybe they're unhappy, having a bad day, lack empathy, or sometimes they're just young and haven't learned better yet. So the first piece of advice is try your best not to take it personally. Easier said than done, I know, but try to empathize. Just a little. They might be in a bad mental space. You absolutely do not have to engage with them. Getting defensive never looks good. Remember, it's very rarely about you as a person, but more about their abstract view of what they see in the game or the situation. And sometimes just being almost unnervingly polite and neat in your replies, if you choose to reply at all, can be surprisingly disarming.
Kill them with kindness, sort of. Okay. So a calm demeanor can help diffuse things. But what about the comments that offer absolutely no value? The ones that are just noise, just static?
Simple. Filter and ignore them. Seriously. If feedback isn't constructive, isn't helpful, just let it pass right by.
Yeah.
However, here's a subtle but really important point. If, say, like 30% of your reviews are all just variations of your game is trash, even though the comments themselves are useless.
The volume of it is the signal.
Exactly. That is valuable information. It tells you something is profoundly wrong with the player experience, even if the feedback itself isn't articulated well enough to tell you what. Now, for larger teams, hiring dedicated community managers can be a fantastic strategy here. They act as a sort of emotional firewall. They filter out the worst of the toxicity. They distill the feedback down into neutral, factual reports for the development team. They're trained to spot trends and complaints. And it allows developers to choose when and where they want to interact directly with the community without being constantly bombarded. For indie developers, even just having a trusted friend or family member act as this filter can be a huge help.
That idea of an emotional firewall is incredibly smart. I can see how that would preserve a lot of creative energy. Okay, now let's flip to the other side. How do we make the absolute most of that good, constructive feedback? How do we truly leverage it to make our game better?
Right. Helpful feedback, remember, is respectful, it's specific, and it's actionable. It focuses on solutions, not just problems, and it ultimately improves the game while building trust between you and your players. First off, encourage players to craft specific suggestions. Instead of just, this game sucks, they should try to describe exactly what happened, maybe a bug they encountered, an imbalance they felt, and ideally, suggest concrete changes. For instance, hey, the inventory management system feels kind of clunky right now. Perhaps adding a drag and drop feature would really streamline the process. See? It focuses on specific behaviors, specific systems, not personal attacks.
Yeah, that's way more useful than just a generic complaint. What else makes feedback truly effective in driving improvement?
Well, a key element, often overlooked, is focusing on the process, not just the results. Think about it. Traditional feedback often just tells you the outcome, like you missed the target or you died here. But truly effective feedback, what some psychologists call feed forward, doesn't just say you missed, it tells you why you might have missed, and crucially, how to adjust your aim for the next time.
Feed forward. I like that.
Yeah, it's not just a critique of the past outcome. It's a guide to the process, the strategy, the specific behaviors that will lead to better success in the future. There are tools out there like Wanalyzer for World of Warcraft players that do this. They look at your combat logs and give really specific recommendations. Stop doing this, start doing that, and here's why it's important for improving your performance.
So it's digging deeper than just what happened to understand the how and the why it could be better next time. That's a powerful distinction.
Exactly. And when players give feedback, encourage them to suggest solutions, but don't necessarily expect them to be implemented. Offering ideas gives developers a great starting point, and it allows other players to comment and build on those ideas, expanding the feedback pool. But players should also be humble, right? Their ideas might not align with the game's core design philosophy, or they might just not be technically feasible. Also, it's important for players to understand development complexity. Assume every change, even small ones, is difficult, especially for live games with existing code bases. Changes need prioritization. You can't just expect instant fixes for everything. Complex changes take time, testing, iteration, and demanding exact timelines for future changes often just sets everyone up for disappointment if, inevitably, plans shift.
That's good perspective for players to keep in mind, too.
Oh.
And where should players ideally submit this helpful feedback to make sure it actually gets seen by the developers?
Always try to use the official channels. Submit feedback through the designated official forums, the main Discord server, the official subreddit, or any in-game feedback systems the developer has set up. Developers are much more likely to see it, track it, and act on it if it comes through those established pathways. And finally, for you, the developer, show support and respond. When you do make changes based on player feedback, make sure you thank your supporters. Talk about the modifications you made on your social channels. This closes that loop we talked about. It renews interest, drives player traffic back to your island, and builds immense loyalty because it shows players, undeniably, that they are heard and they are valued.
Okay, so feedback, both the good and the bad, it can be a lot of process emotionally and strategically. For creators out there listening, how do you keep your spirits up? Especially when you might be facing a barrage of criticism, or even just feedback that really surprises you or doesn't align with your vision.
Right. First off, and this is maybe a bit counterintuitive, remember that the worst game is one that no one plays. Seriously. If you're getting feedback, even negative feedback, even toxic feedback, it means your game is being tried out. It's actually a sign of engagement, however flawed. Think about it. The most popular games often receive the most toxic feedback precisely because they have such a large, passionate, and sometimes vocal player base. So try to have faith in your core creation. Understand that no game is for everyone, and that is perfectly, completely okay.
That's a really vital perspective shift, isn't it? To see even negative engagement as still engagement. What about the actual development process itself? How can creators approach it in a way that maybe minimizes discouragement?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is to embrace iteration. Start thinking of your work in draft terms, not as some precious, finished, unchangeable product right out of the gate. So many successful creative projects, not just games, are built iteratively. Through numerous drafts, countless changes, lots of testing, give yourself the emotional room to make those adjustments. This process actually embraces failure, not as an endpoint, but as a necessary step on the path to knowing what to try next. And also, crucially, seek support. Don't go it alone. Participate in game developer communities, online forums, local meetups, Discord servers. Get advice, get support, get encouragement from other people who truly understand the unique challenges and pressures you face.
That sense of community is so important. Okay, and finally, expert, how do we pull all of this together? How do we take all this feedback, the analytics data, the specific suggestions from players, maybe even decoding the underlying frustrations and negative comments and effectively use it to make our current games better, or maybe even inform our next big project?
Right. This is where the true power of feedback really shines, where it becomes a strategic asset. You absolutely need to combine the data and the direct feedback. They work best together. Use those insights from the quantitative data, like your average playtime, your retention rates, to identify the broad areas that need improvement. Where are the friction points? Where are players dropping off? Then, use the qualitative feedback from your playtesting sessions, from community comments, from those surveys, to understand why. Why are players experiencing those issues? For example, if your retention numbers suddenly drop after an update, go play those underperforming islands yourself, on different devices maybe. Try to really understand the player experience from their perspective.
Okay, so the numbers tell you what to look at, and the direct feedback helps you understand why. What's the next strategic step once you've identified the issues?
Then you need to triage and fix. just like in an emergency room, right? Categorize the feedback you've gathered into maybe non-issues, things you won't address, minor issues, and major issues. Fix the minor issues immediately if they take, say, less than an hour and don't really affect core gameplay balance. Get those quick wins. But for the major issues, things requiring sweeping changes, maybe introducing new mechanics, big balance passes, you need to experiment. Do it alone first, or maybe in a small, trusted group until you feel like you've found solid fixes. It's really crucial to try and break your own game yourself before you put potentially buggy fixes out for blind playtesting.
That makes a lot of sense. Break it yourself first. And how do we keep this whole improvement cycle going consistently over time?
It's all about establishing a continuous improvement loop. Update your game based on your findings, then actively seek out more blind playtests to validate those changes. A good rule of thumb, one source mentioned, is to consider your game relatively stable after maybe 100 plays following the last major update. Gives you some confidence. And remember, regularly updating your island based on ongoing player feedback and also just changing trends in the ecosystem is essential to remain relevant and engaging. This can significantly improve your rankings in the Fortnite Discover algorithm too. Ultimately, this entire process, collecting, analyzing, acting on feedback, it applies to all your current and future developments. It's how you ensure your creations truly resonate with your audience and lead to that coveted long-term engagement.
So when we boil it all down, what does this really mean for creators? Gathering feedback for your UI or a Fortnite creative game, it isn't just about, collecting complaints or tweaking a few numbers here and there. It's about a strategic, definitely empathetic process of continuous discovery and refinement. It's really about building an ongoing conversation with your players.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. By leveraging both the, let's say, the raw data from analytics and the more nuanced insights you get from direct player comments, you really empower yourself to build games that truly connect with people. It's about creating a living, breathing, evolving experience, one that's collaboratively shaped by both you, the creator, and your amazing community.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a final thought. Imagine if every single piece of feedback, even the ones that seem totally useless or just plain mean on the surface,
Yeah.
actually holds a hidden clue, a clue to your game's next great evolution. What's maybe one piece of unexpected, maybe even negative feedback you've received in the past that, looking back now, might have actually contained some hidden gold? Something to think about.
Yeah, that's a great reflection point, and it leads right into your action item for today. So listen up. Take a look at your latest game or project that you're working on. Choose just one metric from that Creator Analytics dashboard that maybe you haven't fully explored before, or pick one seemingly negative comment you've received recently. Then dedicate just 15 minutes, that's it, to digging a little deeper. Try to find the potential why behind that metric or that comment, and then brainstorm just one potential wish for improvement based on it. That one small step, that 15 minutes of focused thought, it really can unlock a whole world of possibilities for your creation. So keep building, keep creating, and absolutely keep listening.